Everybody's got a price, it's the $1 million man. Podcast in demand. Understand, everybody's got a price. $1 million man. Everybody's got a price. $1 million man. Everybody's got a pod, it's the $1 million man. Podcast in demand. Understand, everybody's got a price. $1 million man. Everybody's got a price.
What's up, everybody? It's Marcus D'Angelo, and we are back for another episode of Everybody's Got a Pod. And of course, I could not do it without the man himself, this guy right here to my, I guess it would be my left, the $1 million man, Ted DiBiase. Ted, this is the 1-year anniversary of our show today.
No kidding. Wow.
Yep.
I didn't know that, but that's, man, time flies, brother.
I know it.
I guess happy anniversary.
It's episode 53. That means we've been doing it for 1 calendar year.
Wow.
And man, what a fun journey it's been so far, getting all your stories. And what's really funny is, I'm looking through research and I'm starting to kind of plan ahead for what we're going to do on the show. Brother, it's the tip of the iceberg. We've still got so much left to tell from your career.
Wow,
and I can't wait.
And I appreciate you, Marcus, because I mean, it's kind of like so much, it's kind of like, it'd be different. It's kind of like even football players, they can, say, well, this game or that game, but, when you wrestle every day, I mean, how many days a year did you wrestle, Ted? Just about 340. I mean, we really didn't have many days off, but, so it's, but yeah, there were highlight matches for me too. So anyway, let's go,
man. It's fun. It's been a real blast looking back at your career. And yeah, what's really cool is that nowadays there's all these resources online where, like cagematch.com is, I think it's cagematch.com. I don't know. Look up Cage Match Wrestling on Google and you'll find it. But like it tracks everything that you did. I see every single match you ever had, even house show stuff. So really a valuable resource, but yeah, it really paints a picture as I'm scrolling through, our episode today is about 1989. I'm like scrolling through it. I'm like, boy, he worked an awful lot in 1989. So yeah, I mean, you guys put on some hard miles.
We did.
And Ted, today we are continuing our look back 35 years to 1989 to check in on what was going on with you between WrestleMania 5 and SummerSlam that year. There's a lot to cover, and next time we'll cover the topic, we'll be closer to SummerSlam season. So I'm excited to dig in on these notes on what was going on with you around the spring of 1989. I'm going to hit a couple quick bits of news and notes from the time before we get into what was going on with you during this period. First off, Ted, Tom McGee is going to debut under the Mega Man gimmick with Jimmy Hart as his manager. He doesn't last long with the Fed, but this is notable because he's going to go on to become something of like an internet legend. Apparently, back in '86, he and Bret Hart had such a good match that during Tom's early run with the WWF, that Vince McMahon thought Tom was his next Hulk Hogan. The tape was lost and the match was never seen, but apparently it was the only good match McGee had in the WWF. Ted, I say all that to say, is there any chance that you remember Tom McGee at all?
I'll be honest with you, I don't remember him. But I will say this: if the only good match he ever had was with Bret Hart, that's because of Bret Hart. That's because Bret Hart, who like me grew up in the business and is, he was one of the best. And he led him around by his nose, I'm sure, and told him everything to do. And that's why the guy had a good match.
I think Bret even said in his book that this guy couldn't walk across the ring without stumbling over his own feet. So it's, Bret had his working boots on that night. I'm sure of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we saw the picture of him there. He's a handsome guy, great look, very, very muscular physique, but apparently just didn't really have it. He just had the look that Vince was looking for.
Yeah.
If Vince was able to make it work, quote unquote, with the Ultimate Warrior, why do you think Warrior was the exception to the rule? Do you think the Warrior had enough charisma to get himself over, and that was the difference between a guy like him and Tom?
Yeah, because I don't even remember. I don't remember Tom, but the one thing, the one thing that the Warrior did have, he did have charisma. I mean, he'd get in front of that microphone and, he's like, after the interview's over, he'd go, I don't know what he said, but it was pretty exciting.
That's what I thought as a kid. You'd see this guy with face paint, and he's got giant bulging veins, and
Yeah,
he's all pumped up. I'm like, I don't
yeah,
know what's going on, but I'm getting pumped up by it.
yeah.
Well, another weird bit of news is a big change in character for Ronnie Garvin at this time, who, by the way, just arrived in late 1988. So he's still fresh to the company, and they're doing this with him. We have this from The Observer. They did an angle with Greg Valentine and Ron Garvin. They had a match on TV during the first hour in which Garvin pinned Valentine in an upset. During the second hour, they had a rematch in which the loser had to retire from wrestling. And in this case, Valentine pinned Garvin. During the third hour, Garvin debuted as a babyface referee. So, Ted, do you remember Ronnie Garvin becoming a referee in the WWF? It became a big part of his gimmick.
I don't remember that. I do remember Ron Garvin, and Ron Garvin was a good worker.
Yes.
I mean, real good worker. That's just, I don't know, it just kind of surprised me. Ronnie
It surprised
Garvin.
me too, and I don't blame you. I wish I didn't have to remember it because it was dumb. This is a guy that Jake has said on a number of occasions that Ronnie is the greatest worker he ever stepped into the ring with. Jake will go on record and as saying that.
Oh yeah,
yeah. And he's built his reputation. He's a former NWA world champion. He's a legitimate tough guy. And he's finally made it to the pinnacle of wrestling, right? The biggest stage in all of wrestling, the WWF. And they give him this shitty, stupid gimmick. They turn him into a ref. I don't know. Do you think why do you think Vince wasn't ready to put the juice behind a guy like Ronnie? Any idea?
I don't have any idea. It might be because back then Vince was all about big guys.
Mm.
We didn't have very many, like short guys. You might have some short wrestlers, but they were not your top of the echelon. Jake was big, I was big, Hogan's big, obviously Andre. The Warrior.
So all these big guys are floating around. Then Ronnie comes in, and Ronnie's really well built, but I think he goes maybe 5'10", 5'11", somewhere in there. Yeah. Not a huge guy. So yeah, that could very well be it. And it does kind of feel like, Vince, he's got this reputation that precedes him that he kind of makes his mind up about somebody early on and then pigeonholes them accordingly. Yeah. Would you say that that's accurate? Like Vince will just kind of put his stamp on somebody and say, this is where that guy is. And then he just stays there.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Unfortunate with Ronnie. I feel like there was a lot more meat on the bone.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, oh my gosh, he was a really good worker. I have a good story about Ronnie. We were in, Ronnie's a pilot.
Yes.
Had his own airplane.
Yeah.
He didn't fly all the time, but I remember we had a match in Alexandria, Louisiana, and I didn't even know how it came up, but he said he was going back, he was flying back to Baton Rouge, and I said, you got any room on that plane for me? And he said, oh yeah. I had never flown with him. Well, when the promoter took us out to his plane, we're out in the middle of a field. I'm like, maybe I made a mistake. It was kind of like, where are the hell are we? And it literally, it was a road anyway, maybe a dirt road, but and what he did is we got in the plane and he had the promoter go all the way back down and turn around and point his car at the plane and leave the headlights on. So Ronnie could use the headlights as his target.
Holy smokes, man.
Oh yeah.
Did you ever fly with him again?
No. To be honest with you, he was a great pilot. Obviously, he was a very good pilot. So
he ended up doing it for a living after he left the WWF.
Yeah, he like 13 years. Like a male something.
I know he was like a courier of some sort, like
Yeah.
like he'd carry supplies and whatnot. So yeah,
Whether it was U.S. Mail or UPS or something. Yeah, but yeah, you're right.
yeah, life after wrestling, man, can't exist.
Man.
All right, I think it's also of note at this time that the company is going to release their WWF Superstars arcade game. It'll be your first ever appearance on a video game, Ted. How did it feel to be part of a video game for the first time?
Well, kind of surreal. It's kind of like the first time I walked into whether it was a department store or whatever, and I saw my action figure.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of like, wow. And I never envisioned that at all. But, and oh gosh, since then, I mean, like now it's just unbelievable. I mean, they're still putting me in video games. I guess maybe I'm one of those, I don't know, they consider me, what would they consider me?
A legend, I think, on the game. So it's so it's not like modern day Ted on the game fighting people. It's the old $1 million man. So it's cool because WWE games are fun at this point because they can put you against whoever, Roman Reigns or John Cena or something like that.
Yeah.
So pretty fun. But here I've got this image from that game from 1989. There's you, Andre, and Virgil.
Wow.
So, pretty cool. Pretty fun to look at that stuff. And Ted, it makes me wonder, were you ever a gamer? Like, were you going out to the arcade to play this thing?
No.
So you never played the first game that you were on?
No.
Or any video game?
No.
Wow.
I mean,
now what about
I used to play pinball machines,
Okay.
When I was a kid, because there was a place very near where I lived in Omaha that, everybody would go, and they had a couple of pinball machines in there. So I played pinball, but not too much for the wrestling games. I just know that, because I still have fans coming up and telling me, that he says, you're on my video game, on my video game. And I guess they're still making video games because on my royalties, that's where I make the most money.
Nowadays.
Royalties.
Wow.
Always. I don't know about an arcade, like an arcade game in a building, like the whole
Hard
thing.
to calculate
I know
the
what
amount
you're
of money
talking
it makes.
about. And that game, and I got a great story about that.
Oh.
So my wife and I are in Hawaii, and I can't remember. They've got a little place, and they had a couple of video games in there, and one of the games was the WWF game, and there was this little black boy playing the game, and so I just walked up behind him very quietly, and he just started talking. Knock his head off, kill him, and so and as he's playing the game, he gives it like the quick look over the shoulder and back to the game. And then he just stops. He looks at me. He looks back at the machine. He looks at me and he looks back at the machine. And he goes, "It's a miracle." I'm laughing my head off. He said, "Are you the $1 million man?" I said, "Yeah, buddy, I am." And he said, Can I get your autograph? And he, I said, absolutely. And so I signed him. I signed him the autograph. And but the drop the mic comes when he says to me, my dad's a celebrity too. And I said, who's your dad? And very famous basketball player. Guess.
Not Michael Jordan.
Michael Jordan.
Wow.
And I said, can I meet your dad? And I did.
You got to go meet Michael Jordan after that.
Huh?
The son took you to go meet Michael.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah. That was pretty cool.
Man.
But I mean, that was just a killer. I mean, And he goes, yeah, my dad's a celebrity too. And I said, really? I said, who's your dad? I said, what?
So you went from being like,
I mean, you know, like the greatest basketball player of all time.
Yeah.
Wow.
Only
So,
MJ. All of a sudden, you're a fan, and you're like, "Oh, can I
oh
get your
yeah,
dad's autograph
absolutely.
now?" Well, speaking of kids playing this game, you know, your son Teddy is 6 years old at the time. Would you have taken him to play, or was he into playing his dad on video games?
You know, I really can't remember. I mean, I know the kids had the games and stuff, but you know, I don't know.
They'd probably get pissed at you and just beat up on your character on the game. Well, if you remember on our last episode about 1989, you would come out during Jake's match at WrestleMania 5 to attempt to steal Damien, and you would run way up the aisleway on what appeared to be a rib on Jake to blow him up, to force him to come chase you and the Snake. We'll follow that up with this unforgettable part of your rivalry with Jake, where he's supposed to have a match with you, but instead he gets a match with Virgil, and here's why. Okay, guys, I had to do a voiceover for this because there's some copyrighted music playing during this clip. You can find this on WWE Network. Of course, this is early 1989 with DiBiase, Jake, and Virgil. But hypothetically, if you were to go to YouTube and type in Jake Roberts versus Virgil, there's a chance you might find this exact clip. So you could go give that a shot if you'd like. But what's going on here is Ted is in the back. He's in the locker room with a blanket over him. He's got like an ice pack on his shoulder. He's got a humidifier and he's coughing, wheezing, and hacking up a lung. And he's telling Tony Schiavone that if he had it his way, he'd be going out there to wrestle Jake. But unfortunately, his doctors advised him against it. So Ted has sent his man, Virgil, out there to take care of his light work for him. So Virgil's going to go take on Jake. Tony Schiavone is empathetic. DiBiase's hacking up a lung. And we're going to flash forward to the match. All right, so Jake has got Virgil grounded. And he's signaling to the crowd. He's getting ready for the DDT. He's got him hooked. Oh, man. Jake milking the crowd for all they're worth. You can literally see the crowd start to get up, and there's the DDT. Jake hits him with the cover. Virgil's done, of course. And the crowd is losing their damn minds. There's a cool-looking shot of the bag with Jake in the background. Jake's getting up, eyeing the bag. We know what he wants to do to Virgil. Probably stuff it down his pants. Yep. Teasing the crowd with it a little bit. Jake is so good at milking the audience. Jake has changed his mind. He's saying, wait a minute. Now he's reaching down Virgil's pants. He's not pulling out his gimmick. He's pulling out some money. An iconic moment here 35 years ago. Jake is walking around the ring, handing out $100 bills, real $100 bills to shocked fans. Oh, these kids are pumped up. Jake's giving out the money. He's making sure the camera gets a good look at it too. Back in the ring. There's a happy fan. She's holding a fresh Benjamin. And now Jake, he's got one more in his hand. He puts it down his tights. Why not, Jake? Go ahead. Take it home with you. All right, now he's getting the Snake. All right, he's taking his time. I'm starting to see an angle come together here. He's bringing the bag over. And here's DiBiase jumping him from behind. Beating the dog shit out of him. And he's got him hooked in the $1 Million Dream. Jake struggling against it, doing his best to get out, reaching for the ropes. Ted's got it locked in, though. And Jake is going down. Ted, I'm starting to think maybe you weren't actually sick.
What was the first clue?
Man, just a fun story.
I remember that, but I can't remember what we did after just following that. But anyway, did Jake stay down?
Oh yeah, so you would get Jake down after that, and you'd actually stuff $100 bill into his mouth.
Yeah,
Just kind of setting up the future of the rivalry. But that's going to go off the rails, which we'll discuss here in a little bit.
yeah.
But do you remember shooting like the faking sick angle by any chance? 35 years ago.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I was looking forward to working with Jake because it was so easy,
You
so
know,
easy.
and that makes me wonder. You had worked with Jake previously during your time in Mid South, and knowing what you
But
knew
not
about.
really. Not. I didn't work with him much there. I mean, I don't. I can't remember. I mean, because when I first met him, when he first started, I was wrestling. He was a referee,
Yes.
and I started as a referee, but under the Funks back in Texas.
A few years prior to Jake.
Yeah. So, and was he? I don't know. Did we have any matches in Mid South?
You did a handful, and actually, so you and Jake would have been heels at around the same time. But then, near the end of 1985, Jake and the DDT had turned Jake
Yeah.
babyface. It
Yeah.
was getting so over with the crowd. So you and Jake actually worked at a stadium show. I can't remember where it was, but you were outdoors and had a match against him. And yeah, it's even then you guys just showed some great chemistry. So I'm sure that entering this program, now you're on the biggest stage in wrestling, and you guys are even more seasoned at this point. Had to feel like, all right, good, we're really gonna make some magic.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I always enjoyed working with Jake. It was easy. Yeah. It was like, sometimes you're in there with somebody that knows, know his ass from a hole in the ground
Every once in a while.
every once in a while. But no, Jake was easy to work with.
We spoke before about Virgil having the snake put on him a lot and body pressing it all the way out of the ring as kind of a fun little rib from Jake to Virgil. Entering this rivalry, though, you had to know that eventually you'd get the snake treatment. How did you feel about the prospect of having a big python put on you?
It didn't bother me. I mean, it's like I'm not a snake lover either. I always said the only good snake's a dead one. Because they're just slimy and
Yeah.
but I mean for the purpose of the show and everything, I wasn't worried that this snake was going to drop on me and try to wrap itself around me and squeeze me to death or anything. I mean, when he was carrying that snake into the ring, the snake was pretty docile.
Jake would say on a few occasions that because there was more than one Damien. They'd probably switch out the snake, whatever.
It was never the same snake.
Right. And so he would say, like, every once in a while you get an aggressive snake, and sometimes the snake would bite him. Sometimes it would wrap itself around like his neck. And it was like on 2 occasions, I think Jake actually passed out and had to be helped because the snake was wrapped around him. So it's like there is some danger in messing around with a live snake.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you were never going to have to worry about that happening to me.
I don't imagine you'd let it get around your neck.
Everybody's got a price.
Now, did Jake ever rib you by stuffing the snake down your trunks or doing anything of that sort?
No.
Oh, he took it easy on you.
No, I don't think Jake would have done that because the payback would have been hell.
He must have known it. There's a great story about him putting the snake underneath a toilet stall while Arn Anderson was in there using the restroom. And apparently Arn just climbed out of the toilet stall like over the top to get away from the snake.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
I didn't hear that one.
What a character. Okay, got to hit the pause button on the podcast real quick to talk to you guys about Modern Mania Wrestling GM. Have you guys heard about this mobile game yet? It's a pro wrestling general manager game for your phone or tablet. And this game is seriously a hidden gem, especially if you've always wanted to act as a GM or a booker inside of a wrestling organization. This will scratch that itch for you, brother. Great looking characters, a really slick interface, easy to play in short bursts, or if you want to sit down for a long session, it's good for that too. It's a simple premise. Collect cards for wrestlers, match types, venues, and skits. Use these cards to book wrestling shows. The better the shows you book, the more in-game cash you'll earn to collect more cards. Team up the right wrestlers and you'll unlock their tag team card. Match certain wrestlers up against each other, and you'll unlock their feud card. Manage your roster, create factions, compete, or control other promotions inside the game universe. It is seriously an absolute blast. And by the way, guys, it's free to play, and the developers are constantly updating the game with new characters and features. To get the game, search for Modern Mania Wrestling GM in the App Store or Google Play Store. Once you've played through the tutorial, head to the settings screen, and on the bottom, you'll see a code button. There you can enter our promo code HEAT, H-E-A-T, to get a bunch of free wrestlers and game cash. Wrestling fans, do yourselves a favor, check this game out. Again, it's Modern Mania Wrestling GM. I'm telling you, it's a blast, and I know that you guys are going to love playing it. Ted, I'm not sure if you know about this, but you'd have a match with Jake in Madison Square Garden in April of 1989. So right around this period, which DDP is going to reference as his favorite match of all time and something that really influenced him from a psychology standpoint. So really cool that you and Jake were able to have such incredible chemistry that you're influencing another future Hall of Famer who's trying to kind of make his way up in wrestling.
Yeah.
Really kind of speaks to what you and Jake were able to do. And like, I would imagine you always say that you and Jake were kind of on the same page because you were both second generation wrestlers. So,
Yeah.
I mean, is it a lot of time with a guy like him, it's got to be not even really verbal cues. Like sometimes you're probably just giving him a look and he knows exactly what you want, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's, of course, we always talk, but it's sometimes it's just positioning. Like, for example, if somebody's getting heat on me, and so they, for example, give me a big backdrop, and I settle the backdrop, or they try to cover me, I kick out, and I get up, and I start to go, and I start staggering towards the corner.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I don't stagger to the ropes. I start staggering toward the corner. Well, that's just an impromptu to say, okay, come grab me by the hair and run my head into the turnbuckle. Okay. And so then when they do that, sometimes I would do that and just do it again and call something else. But sometimes after that headshot, I would just swing around and lay myself in the corner with my back in the corner. And then just let them, give me a couple of chops and I'd call a spot, turnbuckle backdrop or, turnbuckle and try to, go for the backdrop. I'm going to kick you. I'm going to go for their elbow. You move out of the way and get it again.
Love it. Especially now that I'm training in wrestling, it's so cool to hear this kind of stuff and this insight and the small nuance things because, man, there's a lot of stuff out there that you have to do. Like, you can't just play in a match. You have to call a lot of it right then and there on the spot.
Yeah. And, and I see so many guys today, they try to sit down and outline a match from bell to bell, and it just doesn't work. Because you can do something one night in front of a crowd, and you get a great response. Now you do the same thing somewhere else, in front of a different crowd, and if they don't respond the way you expect them to, because they don't always, then you have to be able to think on your feet and shift gears.
Yes.
Because it's not always going to work. So, because every crowd's different. Now, I'll be honest with you, one of the toughest crowds for me and for a lot of guys was Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It was like, I would go like, what do I have to do? Slit this guy's throat to make him mad?
Well, that's not super encouraging. I'm going to be working in front of Pittsburgh crowds soon. So, well, it's reported at this time that the matches you're having with Jake involve a lot of rest holds. Meltzer is very critical of these matches and says it's disappointing to see a man of your caliber having some underwhelming matches. What Meltzer didn't know at the time was that Jake was dealing with some serious neck issues. Now, do you remember having to take it easier on Jake in the ring during this time?
Yeah. And of course, this is the first I'm hearing of Meltzer, and you know what, Dave Meltzer, kiss my ass. You think you're the authority on wrestling, and there's so much you think you know that you don't know, even now.
Mm-hmm.
Old school. You go out there, and you have a match, and sometimes you sit in a damn hold because you're trying to convince the crowd that you're working on that, whatever that body part is, whether you got his arm or you got his leg or you got him in a headlock, and it's that timing. Old school. All this crap about, that's what's wrong with wrestling today. As far as I'm concerned, is that it's moving too fast.
Yes.
And it's all about taking big bumps and flying around the ring. That's not wrestling. You got to tell a story. I mean, it's like it's like, I don't know, good guy, bad guy. If you watch watch a good movie, when finally a bad guy does something, like most of the movie is about the good trying to overcome the evil. Okay.
Yes.
And that's what every wrestling match was about, was the good trying to overcome the evil. And you don't do that by doing 25 high spots in a match, and it just drives me, I'll be honest, Marcus, it drives me crazy. I can't watch it today. I can't watch it because the girls may have more believable matches than the guys.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, you got me going now.
Well, that's okay. We're allowed to get a little upset.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
that's
that's
your
it.
anniversary. We're getting pumped up, man.
I'm just,
To your point, Ted, people can have a compelling match doing a lot of rest holds. Again, it's you and I, before we hit record, we're talking about working body parts in wrestling and how, like, okay, Jake, you've got an injured neck. How about I work your leg?
Yeah.
And I'll stretch it and I'll put you in holds. I'll beat on it. There's easy ways to get around it.
Yeah. There is. And well, I guess what I'm saying most of all is the thing that I mean, and I have fans come up to me, like I'm going to Phoenix, Arizona this weekend and doing an autograph signing, and I guarantee you there's going to be, it happens every time. Fans will come up to me and they say, and they want to get my autograph. And they said, I really enjoyed watching you. You guys who wrestled from the mid 80s to the mid 90s were the last great era of wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they're talking about. You watch it now and it looks like a tumbling match. You know what I'm saying? It's like high spot. And, the high spots, after a while, if you don't sell it, it doesn't mean anything.
Right.
If you take a great big beautiful bump over the top rope and you hit the ground and you bounce up to your feet like nothing happened, well, so what?
It was pointless. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's nowadays, if you watch modern wrestling, fans are not even reacting anymore when these guys do like a big dive over the top rope or something. If that happened in 1989, I mean, if people are coming unglued and the match is probably over, it'll be like a double count out or something. But now it's like it happens. They're like, oh, cool. What's next? So it's, weird era of professional wrestling. And I don't know what a high spot's going to be anymore.
And Marcus, I'll be honest with you. I think it's even crossed over to motion pictures.
Mm.
It's like, there's some good old movies I've watched. I mean, it's kind of like, the Alamo, the story of the Alamo. And a big portion of that story was, the wives and the kids and the setup and showing you just what they were going to have to face. And I mean, because it wasn't okay. Now, bang, bang, bang. Here comes all the and the whole story wasn't about the fight.
Right.
I mean, the whole story was not about the fight. It was the build up to the fight.
Yes.
And because the buildup, sometimes that's what makes the fight. That's, I don't know how to.
Well, look, if you look back at some of the greatest movies of all time, really any of the greatest movies of all time, let's say Shawshank Redemption is a good example. If in the first 20 minutes this guy breaks out of prison, where do you go from there? We
Yeah.
needed the build up to him breaking out of prison. It took him years, and he had to go through all this horrible misery on the way there. And then finally, at the end, the redemption happens. He breaks out of prison.
Yeah.
So again, it's about building the story, and you're like, I cannot wait for this guy to get out of prison, and then you make him wait.
Well, in a good wrestling match, that's what every story should be. Is I can't wait for the good guy to make the comeback.
Yep.
That's it.
That's exactly it. Well, I know that you're being careful with Jake and his neck here. And as somebody who dealt with neck issues yourself, what kind of things can you do to protect somebody in the ring and still put on a compelling match?
I mean, it's just the rule of thumb. There's no certain things. It's just you got to respect each other, and you just do things properly. I mean, it's kind of like whenever I was going to have a match where it required me to get the juice and bleed, I told whoever I was working with, it's like I don't need a whole lot of time to get it, because some guys would tape the blade to the end of their finger. They would always have. It's funny. It's kind of like they would do this. Like they would always have tape on a finger, even if they weren't getting blood, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was so people couldn't go, well, every time he gets blood, he's got that finger taped. Well, no. So he would just tape that finger all the time. I carried mine right there like a dip of snuff.
Weren't you afraid of cutting yourself carrying a blade in your mouth?
I never did.
Wow.
I never did. And I learned that from, oh gosh, I think the Funks, but I'd make that little thing. And I mean, because the tip on the razor blade is just, it's just, and the other thing that you do is you take some aspirin, because aspirin thins your blood, or you could, even, take a shot of whiskey, because it has the same effect. And then when you get 20 minutes into a match and you go boom, 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 it looks like you've got hit by a car.
Man, I'll tell you what, I would be terrified of swallowing a blade if I kept it in my mouth. I know it's tucked in your lip and, it's not going to come out unless you wanted to, but that would be all I'd be thinking about the whole time. Like, I'm going to take a punch and I'm just swallow this damn thing.
I mean, it's kind of like, it was like, think about guys who dip snuff.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But this was over on the side where, I always knew where it was. Anyway.
Man.
Secrets in the trade.
Interesting era of wrestling, to be sure. I'd be willing to bet everything in my bank account there's nobody walking around with a blade in their lip nowadays. Well, we've discussed before that if you didn't work during this era, you didn't get paid. And as such, a lot of wrestlers were self-medicating. And Jake has said that during this period, he was medicating just to be able to get out there to the ring with his bad neck. He's going to have 2 surgeries following this here coming up and take a lot of time off in '89. So I say all that to ask, was there ever a time when you noticed that Jake was under the influence, or was he able to kind of keep it between the lines?
No, he always kept it between the lines. There was never a time that he was in the ring that I was, worried about him in that way. I mean, obviously, I knew I did everything I could to protect him, because it's tit for tat. I mean, like, hey, the next time it might be you. You might have some injury that, but by God, you better show up and get in the ring. It's almost like, it's like, I think about it every time I watch the movie about Elvis Presley. There's a scene in the movie where he collapses backstage, and Colonel Parker comes up and he says, I got one thing to say. You do whatever you got to do to get that guy ready to get on that damn stage.
Wow.
Yeah. So, that was the good old days, or not so much, good old days. I mean,
not always good.
Hard times too.
Yeah. And I mean, you think about it, these guys, you guys, there's a lot of pressure on you, and it's a highly competitive business. And so here's Jake, who's dealing with a serious neck injury, an injury that's going to require surgery, but he's still going out and he's beating you with the DDT. So he's flinging himself backwards and experiencing that jar on his neck every single night, because the show must go on. And these guys are self-medicating. It's like, gosh, no wonder so many of your peers would pass away young due to drug overdose.
Yeah.
Man, it's scary. It's a whole different business back in those days.
Yeah, and it was that, man. And I just tried, it's kind of like, and the trips, oh my gosh, the trips were so long.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, in terms of, I don't know exactly what was in it. I don't know what but we called them bennies.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the truck drivers would take. And basically the pill is a stimulant. It's kind of like, you take that pill, and a cup of coffee, and now you're wide eyed for the next 12 hours. So, and they called them bennies, and I can't even remember now where we would get them.
A lot of people will know that as Adderall. It's something similar. It's a similar, or Ritalin.
Yeah.
It's something like that. It helps people focus. A lot of students, it got really popular when I was in college. A lot of students were using it.
I have taken Adderall. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember, I tell you what it was. I drove, when my boys were in Florida in the training facility down there. And they moved it to Orlando, but they were still like in Tampa with Steve Kern. And I can't remember what I had to take, but I remember driving down there, and I think that's it. One of my my boys were both there. Maybe it was the return trip, or maybe, I don't know. I can't remember now, but I know that, one of my boys said, "Dad, take this. It's an Adderall." He says, believe me, it'll keep you awake. You won't. And I did. And I was, I got home and I was still.
That's what they say is the only problem is, like, a lot of kids I knew in college would take it so that they could study before the night of a big test or something. Only problem was, it's like you'd finish studying and you'd say, okay, I'm going to catch a few Z's before class. And you couldn't. You're just up all night and off to class.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's they say it's, that drug can be really dangerous, especially if it's used for a prolonged period of time. So I'm sure a lot of wrestlers were using it.
And I don't know, I don't know what, maybe that's what they do today, but I know it was I can't remember. Well, the other thing that was a pretty good stimulant that I did a little bit, and again, I was so, okay, my mother died when she was 56 years old due to alcoholism. So I was always afraid of that. And I'm trying to think who was that introduced me to cocaine. I just know there was a lot of it around, and it's kind of like I never abused anything. I mean, it's kind of like it was because I was always afraid. I said, my mindset was, I don't want to do this. I'm going to do this all the time because I don't want to get hooked on it. And I don't, and I never did. But I can remember one night, JYD, God bless him, God rest his soul. He got to where he was doing it pretty heavy.
Yes.
I even told him, there was a time when, I was trying to help him out because he had gotten so into the coke. And I just, I remember one night when he had left the show before we did, or I did, and I was driving alone. He had a car full of guys, and I just came up behind him and flashed my lights. He knew it was me, and he pulled over on the side of the road. He got out. He was laughing. He says, What do you need, Dad? I said, I need a little pick me up to get me to Shreveport.
And he hooked you up.
He hooked me up.
Man.
And I was always leery of, getting addicted or what have you, or just getting stupid on it.
Well, good thing, a lot of guys, including JYD, they had to learn that lesson the hard way. That sometimes it's okay if you need a little pick me up, then do what you got to do. But, the guys who were doing it every single day, nope, can't be good.
Can't do it.
So Jake will have to leave to get this neck surgery, but you're going to get a very interesting opportunity in replacement with a returning star. We have this from the 522 Observer. Topping things off this weekend was the surprising return of Roddy Piper as an active wrestler to the World Wrestling Federation over this past weekend. Piper returned unannounced to the public this past Friday night in Los Angeles and will be working through this Sunday, May 21st, on all the cards originally booked for Ted DiBiase versus Jake Roberts. Roberts, who made a decent amount of press in Florida for an out-of-the-ring altercation, legitimately re-injured his neck over the past week. Piper was contacted about coming in as a last-minute replacement for Roberts since shows in both Los Angeles and San Francisco were already sold out well in advance for the Hulk Hogan versus Randy Savage main event. And Piper agreed to return for 10 days. As expected, Piper's return popped the crowds in Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Sacramento like crazy, with his match with DiBiase actually getting significantly more heat in each city than the Hogan Savage main event, which packed the buildings. So, Ted, I know you loved working with Jake, but the reactions you were getting with Piper here must have been electric for this big return. Am I right?
Yeah, and I would say because it was because they hadn't seen Roddy for a while, and I think everybody was really excited to see him because man, he was right there from the beginning with Vince's. He was one of Vince's guys at the beginning when they first started.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he had just, for reference, he had just gone off to Hollywood and made They Live and a couple of other motion pictures. Yeah. So his star was really on the rise. So getting him to come back and for you to be positioned with him as he comes back, pretty big deal.
Yeah. Well, and again, good deal for him, a good deal for me. And I hadn't, and that was the other thing is, I knew Roddy but after having worked with him, oh my gosh, and I loved it. He was good.
Would you say that Piper was a better in-ring worker or Jake? As far as you and your chemistry, did you have better chemistry with Piper or Jake?
I couldn't tell much difference. But basically we, Jake and I come from the same. I don't know that. It'd be a toss up. Piper's a little bit of a different guy. I don't know. That's a tough question because I guess everybody had their own style, but the old school was still the old school, and no matter where you were in the country, that's the way they did it.
Gotcha. All right, last question. We're going to wrap this one up. What was your relationship like with Roddy Piper outside the ring? Were the two of you close enough that you'd be hanging out together?
Oh, yeah. He was a good guy, Yeah, there's, I don't know if we made any, road trips in a car or thing, but, back at the hotel or back at the hotel in the bar having a beer, something like that. Yeah. Good guy.
So Ted, a lot of time has passed, so I feel like you can tell us this story if there is one to tell when it comes to this. Rumor has it that Roddy Piper was a big fan of cocaine, the booger sugar, and you had said that you would try it every once in a while. Did you ever do cocaine with Roddy Piper?
I probably did. I probably did, because but again, there's a difference between. It's kind of like if I wanted to. It's kind of like I need a hit. I don't have a bag That's got, or a lot of guys would carry it in, like, the prescription bottles.
Yeah.
I never had a prescription bottle full of cocaine, but if I needed a little, I'd go to Roddy or somebody like that and say, hey, can I get a hit? They always would. So,
hey, you probably saved a lot of money that way too, Ted. So that's so that's a big win. But man, I can't wait to continue talking about 1989. It's crazy to think that all this stuff is 35 years ago that all of this happened, and we're going to continue to look back here as we go. And again, on my other podcast, the Hacksaw Hour with Jim Duggan, the Snake Pit with Jake Roberts, we're going to be looking back at 1989 on both of those shows as well. So stay tuned as we get the full story of what was going on in the WWF 35 years ago. Hey, look, before we go, I wanted to remind our listeners to get over to our YouTube channel and get subscribed. Not only do you get to watch our show, not only do you get exclusive clips here from Mr. DiBiase here, but it's also the only place where you can get the episodes of that podcast I just referenced, the Hacksaw Hour with Jim Duggan. Jim is also providing videos from his day-to-day life and activities, and they are a total blast. If you haven't seen them, you really got to go and check them out. Jim is so fun to watch, and he's just such a character, the way that he explains things and shows you around. You've got to see it to believe it. Go check it out. If you're not subscribed, you're missing out. Yeah. How great is Jim Duggan, right?
I love Jim, man. He's a good guy. We've been friends a long time. So yeah, I would encourage everybody to do that. Just remember, ho!
That's a way better ho than I do. Every time Jim and I record, he makes me yell ho, and I'm like, boy, I don't think I'm good at it. I got to work on my ho. My wife isn't home. I can say whatever I want. but look, guys, it's youtube.com/@everybody's got a pod. Go and get subscribed. And finally, make sure you follow Ted on all of his social media at MDM Ted DiBiase. He just mentioned that he's going to Arizona this weekend. And if you want to stay up to date on where Ted DiBiase is going to be, brother, you better follow him on all of his social media, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, wherever. You got to follow Ted. You can follow me at Marcus P. D'Angelo on Twitter. And man, Ted, another really fun episode. Thank you so much for looking back 35 years and for hanging in with me here for 1 year, our 1 year anniversary, man.
That's awesome. And again, as always, just remember, everybody's got a price for the $1 Million Man.
See you guys next time right here on Everybody's Got a Pod.